This past January marks a year I've been base jumping now, and what I think can be really important and helpful to both myself and maybe even others is reflecting on this past year, some of the jumps I've made, some of the most important lessons I feel like I've taken away, to try and conceptualize and implement moving forward. Because I can't remember all of my numbers, I drew up some quick stats of what that looks like. In this past year alone, I made 135 base jumps. 35 of those were from a bridge, primarily the Prine. Did 2 from another bridge here in Arizona. 10 jumps were from an antenna, or, a few different antennas, but antennas. I got 1 building jump, 3 jumps from various objects. This includes wind turbines and paramotors, and then 86 jumps from cliffs. Living in Arizona, we have legal cliffs we can jump off whenever, so it's naturally going to be the most common thing we jump. It's funny, I had some buddies in town from the complete opposite side of the country, and they had absolutely 0 cliff jumps, and they had well into the hundreds of building jumps. So it's funny how, just kind of whatever region you grow up in, you're gonna have much more objects of a certain variety than another. Anyways, have 3 slider up jumps, and then 132 were slider down. So the vast majority of jumping I do is slider down at the moment. Hoping to definitely change that, but right now, slider down is the specialty. So without further ado, these are 5 things that I learned in my first year of base jumping.
He is the one.
First on the list, base jumping is incredibly dangerous. Probably goes without saying. If you're outside the sport, most people know this. If you're inside the sport, most people know this. But I think people naturally have an inclination to be ignorant of how dangerous it is to themselves on an individual basis. Just like anything, if you're texting while driving, if you're driving without a seatbelt on, you're eating terrible food, whatever. It's like people naturally have the, well, it won't be me kind of attitude. And I think everybody on some level has it in base jumping as well, or, any high risk sports. And for me personally, I think there can be quite a difference between hearing how dangerous something is and then actually seeing it. So in this past year alone, in my immediate circle of friends that, I jump with locally or friends that are from out of town and come through on a semi-regular basis, I have personally witnessed 8 180s total. Luckily, not a single one of these that I did witness resulted in a cliff strike. Did have some friends that had off headings more than like a 90, and they did have cliff strikes, or in one way or another that I wasn't present during, but I did see videos of later. I've seen 5 people injure their lower legs this past year, from minor to severe sprains. And unfortunately, I am on that list from about 3 weeks ago. Have some tendon damage and I believe a cold fracture, but should be back at it in a couple weeks. Had a hard landing. Luckily, it wasn't worse. Of those 5 people that had lower leg injuries, 2 of them had serious surgery where they had hardware actually put into their legs. They're both doing better now, both still jumping. And then lastly, this past year, we've unfortunately had 24 people added to the base fatality list. Wingsuiters, slick jumpers, everything. And, I try and stay updated on the list as much as I can, and it sucks to see, but I think given the nature of the sport and how much it's growing, we're gonna continue seeing people getting added, and, all we can really do is try and be safer around the sport and try and help others and, try to stay safe ourselves. But a big thing, kind of for me, and I think a lot of my, closest friends and a lot of local jumpers here in Arizona was one of these people of the 24 was actually local to Arizona. He was a really well-respected skydiver and base jumper, really cool person. He's a really good friend to a lot of us, and it was a pretty hard hit for, a lot of us in the community. That was something that I think definitely sobered me up to the realities of base jumping pretty quick. 7 months after I had started base jumping, so it was a pretty immediate blow. But it was something that I think framed a lot of the realities of the sport very clearly for me, and a lot of my friends alike. I watched shape a lot of my, a lot of friends that are jumpers into a lot more responsible people and a lot safer jumpers. So I think there were some positives in that in a lot of ways. But moving on.
Rule number 2. I can't make anybody fall in love with anybody else. Mwah! You little punum there.
Number 2, this is kind of like a two-sided thing. Experienced jumpers might not always be very good at giving you information or insight. Might come in the form of harsh critiques, cold, lacking humility ways of talking to somebody, but usually at the base of it, there's cold, hard truths or really important information that, you really should listen to. Sometimes it can be hard to swallow your pride and accept harsh criticisms, even if you're making mistakes. It's important to listen to people who are experienced because they often have really important information to give you. You're gonna make mistakes. You gotta kind of live with it. Having good intentions can help you stay out of a lot of mistakes you can make and stay out of trouble a lot of times. On the other side of that, there's definitely a lot of people who might give you the impression that they know what they're talking about, or they might really amp you up to do something that you probably shouldn't be doing, probably isn't in your skill range. So it's definitely, I think, important to be able to recognize those situations, and even things that I say here, like you shouldn't listen to most of what I'm saying. You should talk to a large body of people and kind of make decisions for yourself.
We ordered 3 glasses. We ordered 3 glasses. That's the German 3.
Number 3, this is probably gonna be different for a lot of people. It's gonna depend on your natural skill level, as well as how you frame things in your mind and how introspective you are. I think base jumping takes a lot of introspection into, your way of thinking and how you process emotions, more than we give it credit for a lot of times. I'd be safe to say, at least right now, I think if you are in decent physical condition, you have some experience in some amount of, kind of extreme sports, whether it's, biking or snowboarding or surfing, whatever, and then you start base jumping, I think base jumping on a baseline level is roughly 75% mental and maybe 25% physical, at least the jumping itself. I'm not talking about, hiking to exits or your ability to bamboozle a guard so you can get to the top of a building. I'm purely talking about successfully and safely performing jumps, flying your canopy, and doing risk analysis, risk assessment for yourself, and keeping yourself out of trouble. And this is something that I think I recognized pretty quickly. The more I got in my head and the more emotional I was about a jump, the more I would lack confidence, and the more that would manifest itself in how I was reacting with my body. My body wouldn't have confidence and I wouldn't perform the jump as best as I could. I mean, jumping, like the physical nature of it is so small. You don't have to be in like tip-top shape for the most part. You have to have some mind-body awareness or body limb awareness. It's actually called proprioception, which is basically sensory feedback of where your limbs and body parts are relative to space. So I think something important to think about, how your mental attitude is affecting the way you're jumping and, at any experience level.
47 years ago, I was broke, just like you. But now I'm the president, and I'm so rich.
Number 4. In my experience, the overwhelming majority of base jumpers are incredible human beings. They're creative, unique, funny, just like you get a bunch of these weird people together and they all just click without even trying. It's really cool to see. They're incredible people. People that, really look out for one another, keep each other safe, really trying to ensure people are making good decisions for themselves. Obviously, any community has its downsides, but it's an overwhelmingly positive community in my experience.
5. I'll stay. I suggest you hit, sir.
I also like to live dangerously.
Number 5, one of the most difficult things I've come to realize, aside from personal struggles with fear, overcoming your own obstacles yourself, I think is in consulting a close friend that they might be endangering themselves. They're pushing too hard outside of their limits, doing things that are endangering themselves. It can be really difficult talking to somebody that you're close with, you're good friends with, or you care about a lot, that they might be doing something they shouldn't be doing. We're base jumping, so it's like, it's dangerous. Even just saying something small to somebody like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea. It can really be the difference between them having a successful jump and them being seriously injured or going in completely. This is one thing that I'm trying to, instill in myself and try to really focus on moving forward, that I should really speak up for how I feel about something, whether it's somebody that I know closely or somebody that I just see continuously making poor decisions that is probably going to result in them getting killed. And that's something I think is very important to take note of. And that's kind of all there is to it. It's been a hell of a year. Honestly, really stoked for this next year to see what it holds. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. And that's all I got for you guys. See you in the next video.